Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Many a True Nerd, and welcome to another little in-depth analysis of Fallout 4, because we've had some fantastically interesting information coming out about the perk system over the last few days. So I just wanted to I've done some reading around this, I've read everything Bethesda's put out, I've read a lot of theories, and I just wanted to try and collate all the information we have into a single place, try and basically get down everything that we know about the perks into one video. So firstly, just as context, we're now pretty certain we do know how the perks are going to work, which is, as we predicted some time ago, skill points and skill points as like numerical values have dropped out of the game entirely. Instead, what you have now is that you set your special, you allocate special points at the beginning of the game, and thereafter, every time you level up, you either get to increase a special by 1 point, a special of your choice goes up by 1, or you get to take a perk. Each special value has a perk assigned against it. So for example, if you have Strength 1, you have access to Iron Fist. If you are Strength 2, you have access to Big Leagues, and so forth. As your specials rise higher, you have access to a greater variety of perks. Crucial point that some people seem to have missed, these do not need to be taken sequentially. If at your first allocation of 28 special points you decide that you're going to put your charisma up to 10, and as a result your other skills are going to be a lot lower, then there's nothing to stop you taking the charisma 10 perk immediately. You do not need to take the charisma 1, 2 all the way through to 9 perks before you can take charisma 10. You can take them in any order as long as you meet the requirement for it. Each of these perks, however, has ranks, so if you want to, you can take 5 levels of Iron Fist if you really want to specialise in melee combat. However, after the first rank of any given perk, which is always available if you meet the special requirement, subsequent ranks actually have other requirements. Typically, the only ones we've seen so far are levels. So for example, level 1 is available if you meet the special requirement. Level 2, however, is only available if you've then got to level 25, just to make sure that you can't get to the absolute most powerful perks too early in the game. That's kind of how the game balance works. At this point, I think all of that's been confirmed by Bethesda pretty much conclusively, so that's how it's all going to work. The most exciting thing that's come out in the most recent days, however, is the full perk chart that Bethesda has published, which I will put up on screen right now, which basically shows us the images of all of the perks. Now, we know more about some of these than others, but I'm not going to go through every single one of these items on the perk chart, telling you what we already know or what we can reasonably conclude. So Strength 1 is Iron Fist. And just for clarity, because skill points have dropped out of the game, that means obviously you're no longer putting skill points into, for example, guns, melee weapons, unarmed, etc. Instead, each type of weapon has its own perk, which therefore the ranks of it are it getting progressively powerful. So at its most basic level, as you invest more ranks into Iron Fist, that's the equivalent of putting more skill points into the unarmed skill, as it would have been back in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. So Iron Fist is obviously tied to unarmed. It's interesting to note, of course, that the unarmed skill has migrated. It was the endurance special that influenced what your base unarmed score was back in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. They've migrated that to strength, which I think is, in all fairness, is actually good, because strength used to be a little bit underpowered as a special skill because it only directly impacted your melee weapon skill, so that always seemed a little bit low. So it's good that I think that the unarmed skill has migrated into strength. We can reasonably guess that this will have 5 ranks available, though we haven't seen that yet, because all the other weapon skills that we have seen that I'll get to later also have 5 ranks, so it's reasonable to suggest that all weapon skills will have 5 ranks to them. We can also reasonably guess, because we've seen this for several other weapon skills, that the first rank of Iron Fist will be 20% damage increase for unarmed weapons, because all the other weapon skills do that. What we do know, because Bethesda have confirmed this, is that the 5th and final rank of Iron Fist is actually the Paralysing Palm skill. So obviously you can see how they've done it there, which is some of these perks have now had what used to be their own perks wrapped up into higher ranks of existing perks. So Paralysing Palm is now the 5th rank of the Iron Fist perk, if you like. So each perk has its own little perk tree, but those have to be taken in the right order. You can't just take the first rank of Iron Fist, wait till you're at the right level, and then take the 5th rank. You have to take 1, 2, 3, 4 before you can take 5, as well as matching the level criteria. And we know the level criteria for Paralysing perk is actually going to be level 46. So that sort of gives you an idea for the level that Bethesda think you ought to be when you're unlocking the final rank of a weapon skill. And just as a reminder, of course, we know for a fact, Bethesda have confirmed, there is no level cap in Fallout 4. So leveling up, they've also said, will be a bit faster, so you will be gaining perks more quickly than you might be used to. Strength 2 is Big Leagues, or the melee weapon skill. Again, we have actually seen this one on screen during the little How Characters Work video that Bethesda put out a few days ago. So we know that the first rank of this is 20% melee damage increase. We don't know what the subsequent ranks would be, but based on what we've heard about Iron Fist above, we can reasonably guess that it's not just going to be 40, 60, 80 and 100% damage increase. There's actually going to be some interesting stuff in there. So for example, say Slayer has gone missing. We don't know where the Slayer perk is. So, you know, something like that could well be a high level of Big Leagues. Strength 3 is pretty much certainly going to be armor crafting. If you see the Vault Boy little work table, that means crafting of some description. We already knew that armor crafting was going to be tied to the strength skill, because that was in the little cutesy what makes you special strength video that Bethesda put out. The first one on the strength one, that must have come out about 3 weeks ago or thereabouts. But yeah, those cute little kind of animated videos that Bethesda's been putting out, they already confirmed that strength is going to be tied to crafting in some capacity. So strength 3 is armor crafting. We can be pretty certain that's going to have 4 ranks to it, because we've seen, for example, both Gun Nut and Science, for producing guns and energy weapons, respectively. They both have 4 ranks, so we can reasonably assume that any crafting skill is going to have 4 ranks. And below it, Strength 4, obviously that is melee weapon crafting, though I guess we can assume that will be unarmed weapon crafting as well. Strength 5. When I first saw this image, I assumed it was something to do with accuracy, but of course the most likely scenario is big guns are back to being their own separate thing, of course. You may recall in New Vegas, all of the various big guns were rolled into either energy, small guns, or explosives, and big guns stopped being a skill, but it was in Fallout 3. I guess we can assume, in this case, this is back, so this will probably have 5 ranks, and be the various perks related to making you more proficient with big guns. 6, obviously one you'll all be familiar with, that is the Strong Back perk. So obviously taking the first rank of that will give you more inventory. This has 3 ranks and Bethesda has confirmed what the rest of them do, which is particularly interesting. So the second rank of Strong Back actually lets you fast travel while over encumbered. And the third rank of Strong Back lets you run while over encumbered. You do not get reduced to a crawl, albeit you will lose action points if you do so. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, I know that will appeal to a lot of people. To me, that looks like a bit of a waste of a perk, because you could just store some stuff in a locker, travel back to town, sell some of your stuff, fast travel back, collect the stuff you left in the locker, sell the back. That seems like a bit of a waste of a perk to me. But for people who happen to, you know, like just stuffing their bags full of stuff and not having to make those trips back and forward, I see that will be a really fun perk, and it's nice that they added it. Strength 7 is probably the first case of a bit of a mystery perk, to be honest. We're not entirely sure what that one refers to. Obviously, you can see there that the Vault Boy is... There's quite a strong emphasis on the fact that it looks like he's got a lot of arm muscle and is holding a pistol. I would normally have assumed that was something connected to weapon handling, because the strength in the arm would suggest something about how you have the strength requirement to use weapons. But in Fallout 4, we think strength requirement doesn't exist anymore. It seems to have dropped out. And in all fairness, strength requirement wasn't a thing in Fallout 3, so it's perfectly reasonable to suggest that strength requirement won't be in the game at all. So we don't really know what this one is. I would guess it might be something to do with accurate hip shooting, given he's kind of got a hand behind his back. But if that were the case, then why would he be using a pistol? Why wouldn't they make it clearer by having him just use like a machine gun or a sawn-off shotgun or something with one hand? So I don't know. I honestly don't know what this one is. Whether there is in fact some sort of a strength requirement that just isn't as kind of clearly labelled as it was in New Vegas, we can't be sure. But yeah, that one's a bit of a mystery. I'd be curious to hear your theories onto what Strength 7's perk actually is. Strength 8, now here's an interesting one. So this is clearly something to do with shotguns. It seems unlikely to be Shotgun Surgeon, because that feels like the sort of thing that would be a rank within a skill. I don't know if it's possible that shotguns could have been moved out into their own classification and not be part of guns, because the interesting thing is, small guns doesn't exist in this game anymore. So small guns, of course, used to be the skill that impacted all weapons, whether they were pistols, rifles, automatic weaponry, or shotguns. They were all kind of wrapped together in the small gun skill. They've been separated out a lot, however. So later we'll get to the fact that pistols, automatic weapons, and non-automatic rifles have all been split out. So it's not impossible that shotguns have their own weapons class as well. If they do, it's kind of interesting that it's sitting at strength 8. That's the only thing that makes me hesitate for saying that this is the shotgun skill. Because why is shotguns at 8 when big guns are at strength 5? Surely it doesn't require more strength to use a shotgun than it does to use, like, a minigun. That doesn't seem intuitively sensible. So I don't know. The best theory I've got is that shotguns, just like automatic and non-automatic rifles have been split out from each other, shotguns have also been split out, and they have their own perk tree as well, but I'm honestly not sure. What, however, reassures me that that is the case is that shotguns can't live anywhere else. The non-automatic rifles perk very clearly says that you should keep your distance, that it's like the sniping weapons perk. So if that's the case, then surely shotguns can't live there. Shotguns definitely aren't pistols, they're definitely not automatic weaponry, they're not big guns, so I guess this is the shotguns perk. But why is it at strength 8? Is it because shotguns are really, really bloody powerful in this game? So powerful that they're locked behind a strength requirement greater than that of big guns? I don't know, but that's the best theory I've got at the moment, that strength 8 is just the shotguns perk. Strength 9 is another interesting one that we haven't really seen before, the Vault Boy with roots in the ground holding an axe. Of course, the only perk in the history of Fallout that actually kind of specifically has a tree or the Vault Boy turning into a plant in it is the Bark Skin perk from Fallout 3. Where you gained basically a small amount of damage resistance if you completed Oasis in a way where you destroyed Harold's heart by going down into the caves. I obviously don't think it actually is bark skin. What I would actually say is that the roots are supposed to represent the Vault Boy standing his ground, and thus I think this might be a new picture for a variant of Superior Defender, the perk that was in Point Lookout in Fallout 3. I think, however, they've changed it, which is good, because as some of you may be aware, a Superior Defender in Fallout 3 was ludicrously overpowered. What it basically said was, if you are standing still, you get a big damage resistance increase, and you also get a plus damage per shot. But because it was damage per shot, it meant if you had something like a minigun, the DPS of the minigun was like tripled if you were just standing still and had Superior Defender. It was ludicrously too powerful. So it looks to me, by the fact the Vault Boy's holding an axe, that Superior Defender is back, i.e. if you stand perfectly still, you'll probably get both an offensive and a defensive bonus. However, it now only applies to melee or unarmed weapons, which I think actually makes it a lot better. So basically it's a stand your ground with your mighty axe and you'll get a big damage increase smashing anything in the face that runs up to you, which I actually think, if that is the case, would be a really cool perk. And it seems to match the image, it seems to match where it lives in terms of like the strength requirement. It matches up with the weapons that live in that special, so I don't know, that to me strikes me as by far the most likely solution. And Strength 10 is another mystery, this image of the Vault Boy in power armor punching someone who mysteriously looks like they're kind of made of cardboard because they look weirdly flat and at an angle. Now, we don't know what this is, whether this is skills related exclusively to wearing the power armor. If it is, bear in mind that if this is tied to a level 10 special, whatever these perks are and whatever all the ranks connected to it is, they must be flipping powerful. What this does potentially tell us is that power armor is not just tied to, you know, individual set pieces, that you will be allowed to use it more widely in some capacity. I doubt that the game would make you spend your perks on something that only gets used in a small number of story mission set pieces. So if these are perks related exclusively to while you're wearing the power armor, well, it looks in the image like you're punching someone, so is the base rank maybe something to do with unarmed or melee damage, like, you know, using a power fist while wearing the power armor? This we don't know. I've got to assume by the fact that they're wearing the power armor, this is something to do with skills exclusively while wearing power armor, but that does at least introduce the interesting possibility that power armor is used more widely in the game than I would have previously assumed. Moving over into Perception, Perception 1 is obviously going to be Pickpocket. Again, just to stress, it is extremely unlikely that each rank will just make chance of pickpocketing more successful. I think what's actually much more likely is that each rank you take of it means you'll be able to steal different classes of item. In fact, if you specifically look at the what makes you special cute little animation that Bethesda put out for the perception skill, you will see that in that animation, the Vault Boy is supposed to be able to steal ammo off someone so that when combat starts, their gun is useless because they've got no ammo to fire. So I would assume that one of the ranks would be steal ammo from people so that if combat does start, they won't be able to do anything. I think it's also very likely that the putting a grenade into someone's back pocket and then walking away so they explode for a free one-hit kill if you can get a grenade onto them is likely to be a higher rank of this perk. Level 2 is Rifleman. So this is the non-automatic rifles. So effectively things like sniper rifles, hunting rifles, things like that. It does very clearly state in the literature that we've seen that this is for keeping your distance. So this is basically if you want to play as a sniper character, you've basically now got your own little sniper weapon skill to use. So that's pretty cool. That's very likely one that I'll be kind of leveling up relatively early in the game. Again, we know because we've seen it, it's got 5 ranks, and we don't know what any of the higher level ones are going to be. Perception 3, something to do with VATS. We don't exactly know what. Obviously, we can see that the VATS is pointing at an animal there. This one was again name-checked in the little perception animation that Bethesda put out, saying about getting to know the local wildlife, so we think that this is probably exclusively tied to animals. Something to do with higher damage to animals within VATS, greater accuracy against animals in VATS, something of that nature. That one's a bit of a mystery. There's lockpick, obviously, so multiple levels of lockpick for presumably increasingly difficult locks. This is possibly one of the only two, along with the computer hacker perk, where I might actually reasonably think, actually this is just 5 levels, and that lets you access different levels of locks or different levels of computer. Though I guess it's not beyond the realms of possibility that the 5th rank of lockpick might give you the infiltrator perk, because that has otherwise dropped out. Perception 5 is clearly Demolitions Expert, which has just been repurposed into the explosive skill weapons perk, I think we can reasonably assume. If so, that's a bit of a shame, because the explosive skill was always pretty poor back in Fallout 3, because it basically just controls grenades and mines. I mean, I love mines, but grenades and mines are never going to be worthwhile kind of investing heavily in just on their own. I just can't see it happening. So I kind of hope that there's some really interesting stuff in the higher ranks of this perk, because otherwise I suspect this will be one that not too many people go for. Perception 6, become a vampire, or much more likely it's the night person perk back again, which has been in multiple games and typically does feature the little vampire image, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be night person. That in Fallout 3 gave a temporary intelligence and perception bonus at night. Whether that's still going to be the case, I would say, is pretty questionable. I guess it could do. It could kind of give you a big perception bonus, so, you know, your compass mark is more accurate, but as a relatively higher perception skill, I think they're probably going to completely reword that one to do something a bit more interesting. So we shall see. Maybe massively increase stealthiness at night. Who knows? Perception 7. Now this one's a little bit of a mystery again. I mean, based on what we're seeing, rad absorption seems the most likely, given the Vault Boy does appear to just be absorbing a large amounts of radiation, but at level 7 perception, rad absorption will be pretty weak, and I can't see really where that would go after that. A reworking of Radchild is possibly more interesting. For those of you who don't remember, if you get radiation sickness, for each level of radiation sickness, your automatic healing rate goes up, and it's quite dramatic. If you're between 800 and 1000 rads, then you actually regain 8 HP per second, which is actually faster than plenty of enemies in the game can deal out damage, so you're effectively functionally immortal, which is it's pretty damn cool. So that could be what that one is, but again, that one's a bit more of a mystery. Perception 8, Sniper returns, but instead of just increasing the chance of being able to hit the head in VATS, I would strongly suggest this is more likely to be about weapon accuracy in general. Though I would also love to see, of course, given the history of Sniper and what it used to do in Fallout, I'd strongly suspect that the higher ranks of this perk would likely have some form of increased damage if you do land a headshot. Perception 9, and possibly the most exciting one on this entire chart, what appears to suggest that you can now shoot through walls. I would guess that the best way that this would work, if that's what we're actually seeing, is now if an enemy is behind a wall, VATS will be able to locate them, and if you take a shot in VATS, you'll be able to shoot through the wall and nail them. If that's actually true, I don't care what happens, I'm getting bloody Perception 9 and I'm shooting enemies through walls because that's the most badass thing imaginable. So I really kind of hope that's what that is, because if so, that is absolutely amazing. I mean, I don't know whether it will be like only certain walls, for example, or there'll be some arbitrary rules that will kind of make it a bit more balanced, but that sounds utterly, utterly amazing. Perception 10, an absolute utter baffling mystery, is Concentrated Fire is the perk that you have to have your Perception max to unlock. Concentrated Fire, of course, has existed in previous Fallouts, just meaning that if you take, say, multiple VAT shots at the same part of someone's body, the power rises with each hit. But I think kind of most people would have had to look that up, because this is one of those perks that basically nobody takes. So I don't know what they're going to do with it, but this one's going to have to be completely reworked and made a lot more powerful to possibly justify getting your Perception up to 10 to bother taking it, because that really is a perk that's not used very often. Moving over to Endurance now. Endurance 1 is obviously a very well-known one. That is Toughness. We know that the first rank of Toughness is 20% increased damage resistance, but I should flag that we also know that damage resistance works differently in Fallout 4, because we've seen when our protagonist is working on his power armor that damage resistance was listed as over 100. So if it's still take a certain percent of the damage being thrown off you, then obviously damage resistance can't go over 100. It used to cap at 85 anyway. So we're not exactly sure how damage resistance even works in Fallout 4 yet, but toughness will obviously increase it however it works. Endurance 2, lead belly, pretty obvious one. We reasonably guessed that, you know, eating irradiated food or drinking irradiated water, you'll take less rad damage. Endurance 3, the old classic life giver. You just hand over 30 additional hit points to your max HP. We see no reason why that wouldn't still be the case. Endurance 4, chem resistant, of course, is back. So basically, yes, you can now take drugs with less chance of being addicted. This one always bothered me actually in the old Fallouts, because I believe it used to be that your chance of getting addicted reduced by 50%. I always felt like if you've actually gone off your way to take a perk that makes you resistant to being addicted to drugs, you really ought to be 100% resistant. Like, at that point you should just be able to freely use drugs. If you still could quite possibly get addicted, it just struck me as a real waste of perk, so I never took chem resistant in my previous games. But if it had given me 100% chem addiction resistance, I totally would have done. Endurance 5, underwater breathing of some description. This one I'm so excited by. Obviously we can see the Vault Boy in water there. This is a brand new perk. We can be pretty damn certain that this is in fact about not just swimming, but actually breathing underwater, because that was hinted at in the What Makes You Special Endurance video. And I'm so excited because way back in my 30 things I want to see in Fallout 4 video, this is what I said. I just think it would be really cool if underwater was more of a thing. It's like they bloody looked at that video and just made the game from that. It's wonderful how many of the things I flipping want out of Fallout 4 seem to have actually made it into the actual game. Brilliant. Endurance 6, rad resistance. So obviously just any source of radiation will give you less rad damage. Reasonable to assume that probably the higher ranks of that perk will be something like rad absorption, so your radiation goes down over time. Not impossible to my mind that actually something like atomic could be the highest rank of that, where if you recall correctly, while you were within the effect of radiation, you were tougher and you could run faster, and while you had radiation sickness, your action points regenerated more quickly. So I would like to potentially see those as like the high ranks of that perk. I think that would be logically sound. Endurance 7, adamantium skeletons, of course, back, presumably tougher limbs, and high ranks of that, I guess we could reasonably assume that maybe your limbs will just their condition will slowly repair over time, even if you don't treat them with stim packs. Endurance 8, Cannibal! Cannibal is back, but you need to have really have invested in flipping endurance to get access to it. So that's an interesting one, because Cannibal, of course, used to be, I think it had no requirement on it at all. It just unlocked at, I think, level 4 or level 6 in Fallout 3, and there was no requirement. Now you actually have to have really high endurance to unlock it. What are going to be the higher ranks of that? Possibly things like, what was it called? Ghastly Gourmet, was it? From that was introduced in Fallout New Vegas, where once you've taken it, you're also allowed to eat super mutants, abominations in general. Basically, you can eat flipping anything. I would guess the higher levels of Cannibal will let you eat just about anything that you kill, and also gain more health back from it. I would love to see Meat of Champions come back as the highest level of this perk, whereby if you eat anybody, thereafter for a certain period of in-game time, you actually have bonuses to various abilities. That would be brilliant to see the Meat of Champions perk recycled like that. Endurance 9, another incredibly fascinating one, because That doesn't look like, total resistance to radiation or anything, because 1, we've got rad resistance above sitting at endurance 6, and 2, the Vault Boy's not just kind of walking away looking not fussed by that nuclear explosion, he's distinctly looking like he's turned into a ghoul. And what was it I said I wanted in Fallout 4? But I want this to just be a thing that happens to you if you spend too much time hanging out in radiation and not using Rad-X and Rad-Away to get rid of it. I want your character to be able to slowly degrade into ghouliness. Please, please, please let that be. Let us turn into a ghoul. If we absorb enough radiation, we're allowed to turn into a ghoul. Please let that be the case. And if you're a ghoul, you've got a whole set of kind of new intrinsic abilities. Oh, I would love it. I would love it. I will love you forever, Bethesda, if you just let me turn into a ghoul if I take that perk to Endurance 9. Please, please let that be the case. The only alternative I can think of would be that could be Nuclear Anomaly, the level 30 perk from Fallout 3 that was introduced by Broken Steel, where once your HP drops to a certain critical level, you basically explode. And thus doing huge amounts of damage to everything standing immediately around you. But I do just have to keep going back to looking at the Vault Boy's face in that little picture. That looks distinctly like ghoulification to me, and I really hope it is. And Endurance 10, an old friend, that's obviously solar powered, where during the day you gain some health regen back in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. I would guess, obviously, as that's moved to such an elite perk at the very top level, requiring a full 10 points in endurance, therefore now that will have been kind of buffed a little bit, because I don't think too many people took solar powered. It wasn't generally deemed to be one of the essential perks that lots of people took, so I would like to think they'll have done something to buff that in some way. Moving over to Charisma, this is the one that we know the most about, because in the little demonstration video that Bethesda put out, they actually showed off and they actually kind of scrolled through the Charisma skills. So just by virtue of kind of pausing that video, we can see what all of them were and what they all did and how many ranks there were. So I'll just run through those quickly now. So Charisma 1 is Cap Collector, which is basically you're getting better prices when you're buying and selling at shops. That has 3 ranks. Charisma 2 is obviously Lady Killer or Black Widow, depending on what gender your character is, which has got the exact same effects it always used to have. So 5% damage against the opposite gender and increased dialogue success chances with that gender. That's also got 3 ranks, which is kind of interesting. I would guess that Confirmed Bachelor and Cherchez la Femme will move into the second rank of that, given Bethesda have already specifically said that you can have a relationship with any human character. So even though your character was in a heterosexual marriage in the backstory, Bethesda have already confirmed you will be able to have a gay relationship if you want to anyway. Simply the fact that your character was previously heterosexual doesn't preclude the existence of the homosexual perks. So I would guess that the second tier would be a Confirmed Bachelor and Cherchez la Femme, so you can also gain that 5% damage increase and increased dialogue success chance with the same gender as well as the opposite. I am, however, incredibly interested by what rank 3 would be if that was the case, because what exactly is the ultimate seduction perk rank? I'm incredibly curious as to what that would be. Charisma 3 is Lone Wanderer, so basically 15% damage resistance and an extra 50 carry weight if you are travelling without a companion, which is very, very interesting because I personally like travelling without companions in Fallout games because I find they aggro on too many enemies, so if I'm trying to be stealthy, it's easy just to go alone. So I'm thrilled that they've actually given me the option to do that, and they've actually helped balance the game to suit that playstyle. Charisma 4, Attack Dog. Basically, your dog meat gains a hold ability, which means that they hold an enemy in place, which is obviously incredibly useful against fast-moving enemies that want to charge you like ghouls, though I'm guessing it doesn't work on all enemies. If the flipping legendary Deathclaw is charging at you, you can't just tell your dog just go bite his leg and hold him in place for a bit. I'm guessing it doesn't work on enemies over a certain size, for example. But we also know that while your dog is holding an enemy in place, you get a bonus chance to hit them in VAT. So in other words, because they're being held still, you can aim at them more easily. I guess we can also reasonably guess that potentially the higher ranks of that would let your dog kind of slow down and grab the leg of larger enemies, or you get higher damage or accuracy bonuses while your dog is grabbing them. Charisma 5, it's another old friend. It is Animal Friend, except it's changed very dramatically. Animal Friend, of course, used to simply say that all animals would ignore you, and then if you took a further rank of it, all animals would actually come to your aid in the event of combat. That's changed quite dramatically. What has instead happened now is Animal Friend works that if you point your gun at an animal and they are lower level than you, then there is a chance, and we don't know obviously what chance, that the enemy will be pacified and will stop attacking you, which doesn't really sound like animal friends, that sounds more like an animal tamer, but never mind, whatever. There's 3 ranks to that, and I'm just going to skip down a little bit now because we know a lot more about this thanks to some further discussion that Bethesda has had since. So down in Charisma 9, we've got Wasteland Whisperer, which is Animal Friend, except it applies to all creatures, including Abomination, so actually being able to do that to Death Claws, which is, you know, really quite funny. And finally, Intimidation, which is the same thing but for humans. So if you point a gun at a human that's hostile to you, then there is a chance if they're a lower level than you that they will decide to be pacified and not want to fight anymore. However, in the case of Intimidation, we know what the 2nd and 3rd ranks are because those were showed off by Bethesda. So the 1st rank lets you point your gun at them and they can just be pacified. With the 2nd rank, if you point your gun at them and you're successful, then the creature, animal, abomination or human, can actually be incited to attack. So they'll actually fight for you. And finally, with the 3rd rank, you can actually control them and issue with them instructions in some capacity. So you can actually, give them orders and make them do what you want. Which sounds really amazing. It's kind of bringing like the calm and the fury magic from Skyrim into Fallout in a quite believable way, which I really quite like, because that was always some of my favourite stuff to do in Skyrim. That was always my favourite playstyle in Skyrim. I loved just running around with kind of, you know, controlling and pacifying and making enemies fear and stuff like that. That was brilliantly good fun. I'm thrilled it's there. The only bit I'm a little bit dubious about is the enemy need to be a lower level for that to work. And my understanding from reading on Fallout 4 is it sounds like there's going to be Fallout 3 style kind of leveling with the player. So when an animal charges at you, how do you know whether it's lower level than you or not? I mean, it just feels like a frustrating gameplay experience to me. If you see an animal charging at you, you get out your gun and you don't fire because you're trying to pacify it, and then it just turns out that it was a high level than you, it just charges you and slices your face off. That just strikes me as a slightly annoying experience. So I don't know if there's a way to tell what level the enemy is. I don't think any of the UI we've seen so far gives you that information. Even if you zoom into them with VATS, you don't know what level they are. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that's going to work and whether that's going to be workable or not. But like, if it works quite smoothly and if it kind of has a fairly workable chance of success, that sounds hilariously good fun, and I'll definitely be doing kind of a high charisma character run at some point, because having Intimidation, Wasteland Whisperer, and Animal Friend from an early stage sounds hilariously good fun. And for the rest of the charisma skills, Charisma 6 is Local Leader, which basically is just the perk connected to setting up settlements and making them trade with each other. So if you want to build lots of settlements and have traders move in and bring you all sorts of exciting goods, that's pretty cool. My understanding from kind of stuff that Bethesda said in the past is the way to get the best guns in the game, there's no one way to do it, so you can build the best guns in the game if that's what you want to do, or if you would rather not kind of be building guns and crafting stuff for yourself, if you simply invest in things like Local Leader, the traders will have really good quality guns, so therefore you can just buy good quality weaponry. So I think that's an interesting way of doing it. Charisma 7 is Party Boy, or Party Girl, depending on the gender of your character, where we know the first rank of that is related to alcohol addiction. You cannot get addicted to alcohol. Now, this one's kind of interesting because I would have assumed logically that the later ranks of that would effectively roll in Chem Resistant, but we can see that Chem Resistant already lives over in Endurance. So what are the high levels of Party Boy and Party Girl going to be? I would guess that alcohol will start giving you more benefits, kind of like Cass's perks in New Vegas, for example. I would guess, yeah, it's just that at the first rank, alcohol can't get you addicted. At higher ranks, alcohol actually starts giving you really powerful bonuses. I can only guess that's the case. And finally, at Charisma 8, you've got Inspiration. We know from that the companions will do more damage and that they won't be able to hurt you anymore. So it kind of feels like that's rolling in the nerve system from Fallout New Vegas. So that sounds kind of pretty cool. Obviously, we don't know how powerful companions are going to be in this game. I've said all along, I think kind of in both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, companions are overpowered, and I think they always have been. So I'd like to think, hopefully, maybe companions will be a bit more flimsy unless you actually take some ranks of the Inspiration perk. Moving over into Intelligence. Intelligence 1's the brand new Vans skill, where basically the path to your closest quest target will be highlighted in VATS. Interesting little system. Sure, I'm up for that. I mean, if that means kind of potentially that we can have more playthroughs where there's less UI on screen and we can just kind of get highlights to where the next target is, just by going into that. I'm up for that, that sounds kind of interesting. Intelligence 2, that's just your medic skill, so obviously we know that kind of the lower ranks of that will simply be gaining a very large volume of health, so I think kind of what we've seen so far is at level 1, you can gain 40% of your entire health back with a single stim pack, so that's pretty damn powerful. Obviously we don't know what the higher ranks of that was going to be, but maybe things like living anatomy have been merged into there. It certainly does seem very common from what we've heard from Bethesda so far that they've taken some of the advanced perks from Fallout 3 and they've made them the higher ranks of perks that are accessible earlier. So in the same way that Paralyzing Palm has been merged into Iron Fist, it seems quite reasonable to suggest that something like Living Anatomy has been merged into Medic, so I would expect to see that as one of the high-ranking perks of Medic. Intelligence 3, one that we're very familiar with, obviously Gun Nut. This is the skill that you need to craft guns. Quite simply, it just seems to produce the best guns in the game. You're going to need to keep taking ranks of Gun Nut. There's 4 ranks in total. We know that you need to be level 25 for the 3rd rank, so it kind of feels like actually you'll be able to build pretty advanced guns relatively early into the game. Intelligence 4, it's Hacker, so computer hacking. Though, again, as with Infiltrator into Lockpick, I would be incredibly surprised if Computer Whiz didn't get merged into one of the higher ranks of this as well. Intelligence 5, bit of a mystery. I'm honestly not even sure what that Vault Boy's supposed to be doing to himself. I think he might be performing surgery on himself. Is that some sort of first aid skill possibly, where even if you're completely out of stim packs, if you just kind of pause for a second, you might be able to do some sort of like basic first aid that increases your health a bit? I've no idea. That's just my best guess. I honestly cannot see what that picture's supposed to be trying to represent, so I'm not sure. Please tell me if you think you've got that one figured out. Now, Intelligence 6 and 7. This one's a bit confusing, because what you think you probably ought to see intuitively there is that Intelligence 6 is your energy weapon skill perk, and Intelligence 7 is science for your energy weapon crafting. But that's not actually the case. We saw in the character guide video that the character that Todd was showing off had 1 point in science, and it was the Intelligence 6 that was highlighted as having a point in it. So that there image with the Vault Boy holding the laser weapon at the moment looks like it must be the science skill, i.e. for energy weapon crafting, even though there's no workbench there, which doesn't feel right. That feels like that should be the energy weapon skill, not the energy weapon crafting, but that's science. It's got 4 ranks. You can look at the video and you can clearly see that when Todd is showing off the character in question has a rank in science, and when he goes into the perk table, that one, Intelligence 6, is the one where there is a perk taken already. So that's science, which therefore raises the interesting question: what's that mad scientist icon on Intelligence 7? The guy isn't holding any energy weapons. He's got a test tube. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is that is the Mad Bomber. Either this unlocks a whole bunch of interesting new alternative kind of explosive recipes at workbenches. I'd love to think that was the case, but if Mad Bomber was a thing, surely that would live as one of the high ranks of Demolition Expert over in Perception, not over here in Intelligence. So I'm a bit confused about the science skill and the Mad Scientist over here. I'm guessing one of them has to be creating energy weapons and one of them has to be upgrading energy weapons, but I'm really not sure which way round it is. Intelligence 8, obviously, that's Robotics Expert, so you'll be able to tinker with electronics as usual. Intelligence 9, again, bit of a mystery. Vault Boy playing with a big atom. Possibly atomic? Could be the atomic skill. Alternatively, that could be the energy weapon damage, even though he's not holding an energy weapon. Again, a little bit confusing there, not 100% sure. And finally, rather bafflingly, over on Intelligence 10, the highest, most elite intelligence skill, we've got Nerd Rage. That perk that used to just be tied to level 10 that nobody ever took because it wasn't very good. So obviously we don't know what they've done there, but they must have given that one hell of a buff to make that be justified to Intelligence 10, especially in a world where, because obviously in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, you pretty much always took Intelligence 9 and boosted to 10 as early as possible to maximise the number of skill points available to you. In a world of Fallout 4, where intelligence isn't giving you more skill points, it's just increasing your XP, so effectively it's replacing Swift Learner. Depending on the maths of it and how more quickly you gain perks as a result of having higher intelligence, given there's no level cap, arguably it's still optimal to have an extremely high intelligence early on, but I think it's less compelling than it used to be, at least at the moment. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what the hell they've done to Nerd Rage to make them think that justifies the elite spot in Intelligence 10. Moving over into Agility. Agility 1 is Gunslinger. That is the pistol skill. So again, as a reminder, all the different small gun classes have broken out into their own mini class. So Agility 1 is your pistols class. Again, this has 5 ranks. We know a lot about this one because Bethesda have actually spoken about it. So we know the first rank is simply 20% more damage with pistols. However, the higher ranks include a chance to disarm enemies by hitting them with a pistol and instant limb crippling, which is very, very interesting. I love the fact they've done this, by the way, because if pistols and only pistols have a chance, an intrinsic chance to disarm enemies, that means even if your pistol isn't the most powerful weapon you've got, there will still be situations when you'll be wanting to use pistols ahead of a more powerful weapon. Because one of the things I ran into, and one of the things that I suppose looking back isn't perfect about Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, is once you've got like a handful of the most powerful weapons in the game, there's very little reason to use anything else. So in Fallout New Vegas, I'll pretty much exclusively be using the unique variant of the Gauss rifle together with max charge ammo for my powerful one-off shots, and I'll be going over to my fully upgraded Gatling laser for my high DPS. And there's very little reason to use anything but those 2 weapons ever again, really. There's very little reason to ever bother, apart from maybe going over to the anti-material rifle with explosive rounds for crowds. But other than that, pretty much those 3 guns covered everything I ever used in Fallout New Vegas once I had them. There's no reason to use anything else. The fact that each weapon class will have its own unique little effects that will make them situationally more useful, I'm thrilled they're doing, and I think that's very, very exciting. Agility 2 is Commando. Same deal, that is the weapon skill for automatic weapons. We don't know anything about that, we just know that there's 5 ranks and the first is 20% damage increase. Agility 3 is Sneak. So again, 5 ranks to that. That's just replacing the old Sneak skill. That's where the perk lives on Agility 3. We know the first rank of the 5 is going to be 20% harder to detect, and we know that both Silent Running and Light Step have been merged into this. So that's a pretty damn important one to get up, because Light Step is always hugely important, and I'll be getting that as soon as possible. I would guess Silent Running will be one of the higher ranked perks, and Light Step would be one of the mid-rank perks there. Agility 4, obviously another old classic there, it's Mr. Sandman. Killing people in their sleep, don't know much more about what the ranks of that will be. Agility number 5, Action Boy and Action Girl are back, so obviously that always used to be increased AP, no reason to think that won't still be the case. Action points will probably be arguably more useful in this game than they used to be, because the Skyrim style system of being able to use your action points, or stamina as it was in Skyrim, to sprint has obviously been introduced into Fallout 4, so having more action points is not just more in VATS now, it will also let you sprint around more, so you'll be able to travel around faster, which is arguably just more useful in general. Agility 6, a newcomer and a very interesting mystery, what clearly looks like some form of evasion skill. Obviously that logically feels like that ought to live in Agility, so that seems perfectly reasonable. The question obviously will now be, is that going to be a passive skill, i.e. the game will just kind of lower the accuracy of your enemies to act as if you're evading them on the go, or will it actually be an active move that you have to undergo, like there'll be some form of roll or jump or backflip or something that you can do to avoid bullets if you're being attacked, that make you kind of much harder to hit while you're executing the move. That, I don't know. It will be interesting to see how they decide to bring that into the game. Agility 7, it's another old friend, it's Ninja. Ninja's kind of interesting because Ninja doesn't feel like the sort of thing that kind of ought to be a perk in Fallout 4. It feels like the sort of thing that ought to have been rolled into Sneak. So I can only assume they've made some fairly big changes. Ninja, for those of you who never took it, that used to be an increase in melee damage and an increase in your sneak attack criticals. So that doesn't really feel like enough to be a kind of a perk with multiple ranks on its own in Fallout 4. I've got to think they've rethought that somewhat, and like that will be much bigger and chunky than it used to be, especially since it's living in the higher end of the table at Agility 7. Agility 8, here's a bit of a surprise, Rapid Bloody Reload. A skill that I never once took, because reloading never struck me as particularly slow in Fallout. So either they've massively slowed down reloading in general, which I really hope they haven't, because that'd be bloody annoying, or Rapid Reload is now way better than it used to be, because Rapid Reload is one of those skills I think I've literally never taken once, because I've never had a problem with the speed of reloading in Fallout. So I don't know what the hell that's doing up at Agility 8, but I will be curious to see what that is and what its ranks are, because I can't see how that's possibly going to justify being taken. Agility 9, a newcomer and something much more interesting. Obviously, we can be pretty certain this is sprinting, because we know sprinting is a thing, as I was just saying. You can now use your action point to sprint to go much faster. I would guess that the ranks of this will be related to using less AP to sprint, so you can sprint for longer distances, and also just being able to sprint at a faster rate, i.e. being able to go a little bit faster than you would be able to with your normal sprint. That's pretty cool to me. I like the sound of that, and I just love in general that it feels like Fallout 4 is going to be a much more fast-moving mobile game than it used to be. Insofar as we've now got swimming, there's going to be swimming underwater, there's going to be sprinting and sprinting very fast, so it just feels like you'll be able to move around a lot faster in more interesting ways versus how it used to be, which is fantastic. And finally, on Agility 10, another newcomer and a bit of a mystery, but luckily Bethesda have already confirmed what this one is, so we do know this. Agility 10, the elite agility skill, is Gun Fu. What this basically means is if you go into that and then you target 3 enemies in a row, the first enemy you'll hit with normal damage, you'll then hit the second enemy with bonus damage, and it rises with each enemy that you hit. So if you move around multiple enemies, for each one that you hit, the damage rises, so it builds over time, which is pretty darn cool. So that's just really, really badass. I mean, that's the sort of skill I want to have at the high end of the specials, where it's just a badass skill, where it's really awesome to use. I think that's a suitable reward for getting your special up to 10 in a particular skill. You want something badass, like shooting through walls, like shooting multiple targets. That's the sort of stuff we want. And finally, over into luck. Luck level 1 is obviously Fortune Finder, that's an old friend, and it's kind of very similar cousin Scrounger on Luck 2. Nothing much to say about them really, though I would imagine they'll have multiple ranks and become a lot more powerful and useful than we're used to seeing. Luck 3, it's our old friend Bloody Mess. Its base level, the initial rank, is exactly what you're used to, which is 5% damage increase and obviously things exploding in a pile of giblets in a highly entertaining fashion. What's particularly fascinating is Bloody Mess has 4 ranks to it. What the hell are the higher ranks of Bloody Mess going to be? I would love to think it's just explosions of bodies in increasingly comical fashions, but I've got to imagine there's something a little bit more useful there, so that will be particularly interesting. Luck 4, another old friend, it's Mysterious Stranger, who is back again. They'll be interested to see if that's a bit different to how it used to be, because of course we have seen in the very initial trailer to Fallout 4 that was released, a chap who looks mysteriously like the Mysterious Stranger, who we actually appear to be meeting in Boston. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a bit more interest around who the Mysterious Stranger is, rather than just being some bloke in a hat who shows up and saves you occasionally. If there's actually going to be a bit of story behind him, that would be very interesting if so. Luck 5, it's another mystery. It appears to be a wide-eyed mad vault boy with, and he looks really bloody weird with those eyes, just staring at an empty chair but reacting with surprise if he sees something. Now, there's no perk that's anything like this into this picture previously, but given the vault boy appears to be going mad and seeing things that aren't there, I can only assume this might be Wild Wasteland. This could be Wild Wasteland back again. Wasn't in Fallout 3, was in New Vegas. Would be interesting to see it back. So my best guess is that's going to be Wild Wasteland, because I honestly can't bloody think what else that might be. Luck 6, it's an old friend. It's better criticals. At rank 1, that gives you 50% better critical damage, and that's... oh, I like that. I like it already. I'm definitely going to be maxing out that one. I don't know what the max one's going to be. I'd love to think that one was just a straight up damage multiplier, so you're talking like 200% critical damage increase by the time you get to rank through better criticals, but obviously an old classic reliable and probably syncs very well with the rifleman skill if you are a sniper class. So sniper classes might want to be looking at perception and luck as their key characteristics. Luck 7, bit of a mysterious one here. The Vault Boy has blown someone's arm off. They look sad, but are not dead. And the Vault Boy is clearly holding a skull and crossbones in his other hand back. Which I've read, and I kind of believe this theory, that this might mean if you take this perk, you can blow off someone's limbs, but they don't die. Because of course, back in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, limbs would only explode off at the point of death. You could cripple someone's limbs, and that would have an impact on them, but the limb would never come off until the point of death. This would appear to be some sort of perk that would allow you to blow people's limbs off, even if they're not out of health yet. So that's kind of fun if that's the case, because we do, for example, know in Fallout 4 that that's already been animated, because you can blow the limbs off ghouls, and if you blow the legs off a ghoul, they'll just keep clawing towards you anyway. We've already seen that. Blowing the limbs off a feral ghoul no longer kind of stops them. They will just keep coming until they are actually out of health. So the game, like, that already kind of, that system of my limb has been blown off but I'm going to keep going anyway, already exists in Fallout 4. I'd love to see it applied to human enemies too if you've got that skill. That'd be quite good. So if that actually is the case, then that's pretty hilarious, and that's another fantastic skill to be able to access at a higher level of luck. Over at Luck 8, we've got another old friend. It's Grim Reaper's Sprint. Obviously, we know that that increases your action points if a target dies from a VAT shot. Given it's quite high up over here in Luck 8, so quite an elite level, I'm going to assume that that's going to be closer to Fallout 3, where it was extremely powerful, where you got all of your action points back if you killed someone in VATs with a VAT shot, versus Fallout New Vegas, where it was still pretty good, but you gained a much more modest amount back. Though possibly maybe the first rank will be more like New Vegas, and you'll be able to upgrade it into being more like a Fallout 3 style perk over time. Luck 9 is, well, Luck of the Irish, the perk that a lot of people seem to talk about. A lot of people have opinions about this, but I can't find a single bit of evidence about it. Everything I read about this, people keep telling me over and over, oh, that means really elite drops of items that you'll find in containers. Can't find any official statements to back that up whatsoever. That's what that will be. In fact, if anything, I find that incredibly unlikely, because surely that will be the higher ranks of, say, Scrounger and Fortune Finder will be finding extremely elite gear in containers. Surely that would be the highest level of Scrounger, so I don't see why Luck of the Irish would be doing that. That's effectively just pulling double duties with Scrounger, so that would be pointless. On the contrary, the Irish Vault Boy clearly seems to be fighting and has a little punchy bag thing in the background there, which would suggest this might be some form of melee-related skill? I don't know. I mean, one thing I did notice, of course, is if you look over at Strength, if you're looking to put together a melee or an unarmed character, over in Strength, you've got your unarmed and your melee skills, fine, and you've got your melee crafting and your armor crafting, so therefore, over in Strength, you've got the ability to make an amazing weapon, make amazing armor, and max out your ability to do damage with a melee weapon. So whereas if you were doing a melee character, you'd only have to max out Strength. So if you want to do a melee run, you'd just put Strength to 10 and ignore everything else, because that would be fine. So it feels like, I don't know, possibly they've put this melee-related perk over in Luck, so that people who want to build melee classes have another special skill that they also need to max or come close to maxing out in order to have an optimized character. Because if you think about it, characters who are like using guns are going to need various skills across the various special. They can't put everything related to melee or unarmed all in Strength, otherwise it would just be too easy for someone to create an optimized Strength character without ever bothering to increase any of the other special skills. So, I don't know, I feel like Luck of the Irish, I suspect, is something to do with melee and unarmed, and therefore is just something that melee and unarmed characters are going to want. But that's just my intuition based on the fact that otherwise it's too easy for people to have optimized melee characters without actually investing many special points. And let's end off with a low note. Luck 10 is, I don't bloody know, but bullets are curving in space away from me. So honestly, this one looks quite similar to Agility 6, the evasion skill that seems to live in the agility tree. So I'm not quite sure how they're different. I guess that would make, therefore, it more likely that the Agility 6 evasion skill is an active ability you actually have to do, whereas the Luck 10 evasion skill is a passive bonus, which I guess the game will calculate by simply decreasing the accuracy of all your enemies around you, so bullets just seem to be missing you more. It's an interesting one. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's kind of a distant relation to Dream Crusher from Fallout 3, so enemies are less likely to critical hit and less likely to hit you in general. I don't know. But equally, what is implied is abundantly clear. If you take that perk, bullets will hit you less often, and being shot less is universally a good thing. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That is just my quick run through the entirety of the perk chart. Some mysteries remain, but I think I've kind of got some pretty good theories for some of the ones that we're not 100% clear on yet, at least. Please let me know if you've got any theories for the ones that I'm a bit kind of clueless about, because I think there's 2 or 3 in there that I'm still just have no idea what they refer to. So I'd be very interested to hear your theories there. And let's just end off today by taking a moment to remember the perks which haven't made it into this game. Can we just briefly have a moment of solemnity to say goodbye to Swift Learner, which dropped out of the game because increased XP moved to the intelligence skill. Let's say goodbye to Comprehension, which has dropped out of the game, because while skill books are in the game, they now give unique perks. So for example, Grognak the Barbarian is still in the game, but reading them now gives you the unique Barbarian perk, which gives you higher critical hits with melee weapons, for example. So Comprehension has dropped out of the game. Educated has obviously gone because skill points are gone. Pyromaniac appears to have gone, though may yet survive as one of the ranks of Demolitions Expert, we don't yet know. And Explorer does appear to be gone. I can't see where that would have been merged into, so it would seem Explorer is also dead. So may those perks rest in peace, and may we enjoy our new perks. So yes, I will have another little video looking at Fallout 4 as soon as there's any interesting new information that comes out. But oh, it's getting close, isn't it? I'm very excited. It's getting very, very close. And in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I've been John. This has been Many a True Nerd, and this has been my analysis of the new perk table in Fallout 4. Thank you very much, and goodbye.